Joining me now is the member of the House Committees on Judiciary and Foreign Affairs, Texas Congressman Ted Poe. Congressman Poe, your reaction, some very strong words from the president.
The president wants the Russians and really the Syrians to know where we stand on this issue. Chemical weapons, the use of chemical weapons is a violation of international law. The Russians and the Syrians agreed a year or two ago to get rid of all of the chemical weapons out of Syria. They lied. They're still there, and they're being used against the people of Syria. There has to be consequences for this violation of international law, and the president is going to have I suspect, a targeted strike into Syria in retaliation for the use of chemical weapons. There are many options that are available down the road. Most of them are not very good in the fact that I don't think most Americans want a full military invasion of Syria. I don't think that's going to happen. But a targeted strike to get their attention is something that I think the president's going to do, and I support him in that.
Okay, so to your point, if a tweet is a directive, we are going down the road of military action against Syria. There's almost no doubt about it after the president's comments, Congressman, this morning. So targeted strike to get their attention. Once you have it, then what? What's the goal?
Well, the goal is to immediately have them quit using chemical weapons. Now, that has not worked in the past. They went ahead and used chemical weapons anyway. So there has to be some retaliation to the Syrians and to the Russians. And don't forget the Iranians. The Iranians are involved in all of this, too, who murder their own people. And what that will be, I hope, is something that will cease and desist on the use of chemical weapons in this civil war in Syria.
Well, how
the
big
United States is not going to topple the regime, remove Assad. That's not going to happen.
Despite the strike on that air base, that airfield last year, there's a lot that the United States has not done to really go after Bashar al-Assad. I'll point to a chlorine gas attack earlier this year, killed more than 20 people, mostly children, and that warranted what was essentially a statement from Rex Tillerson, then Secretary of State, that was saying that it was no denying that Russia, by shielding its Syrian ally, has breached its commitments to the United States as a framework guarantor. This is about the UN deal some years ago brokered by the Obama administration. But again, we didn't strike. And Bashar al-Assad read that as, quite frankly, weakness and that he would pay no price. We've also did not stop Iran from establishing a new military presence on the border with Israel in Syria. So how big does this message need to be? Do we need to take out the entire air force of Bashar al-Assad?
What we do, really, I think, is something that the military and the president need to decide. But it has to be strong enough to keep the Russians, the Iranians, and the Syrians from using chemical weapons on their own people. And that has to be the message that we send to them. Assad is, I think, going to stay in power. It's not our plan to remove him. I do not see the United States using a full military invasion of Syria. But I think the strike will be strong enough to say, look, you have to cease and desist. The Russians and the Iranians and the Syrians, they cannot be trusted. And they are using this as a proxy war to really have their own Russian and Iranian influence in Syria and have Assad as their puppet. But that needs to be strong, and I think it will be strong when the president decides what exactly to do militarily.
Turning now to the heated sanctuary showdown, another California city voting overnight to join the Justice Department's lawsuit challenging the so-called sanctuary state law. Watch as residents in Orange County take a bold stance against the policy limiting cooperation between local law enforcement and federal immigration authorities.
Anybody for SB 54 doesn't realize we're talking about criminals here, not refugees, not immigrants, criminals. We're going to deport them, and that's just too bad if you don't like it.
Members of the National Guard in Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas have already begun arriving at the southern border, but California has not yet complied with President Trump's request. Congressman, your thoughts on this?
It's a smart move on the part of the president to put the National Guard on the border. I'm from Texas, and we had the National Guard down there a few years ago, and it worked. It stopped people from crossing into the United States. So I totally support that idea because it's something that has worked in the past. Now, one thing that we need to do as a nation is remember we have to protect the border. And the border is the middle of the Rio Grande River. And once people cross that middle and come into the United States, they are in the United States. So our philosophy needs to be keep people from crossing. Therefore, we need boats in the water down the middle of the Rio Grande River, and we also need the aerostats, cameras, and those kind of things to prevent people from crossing in the first place.
Yeah, I know we are showing a graphic that says border apprehensions in March did surge up more than 200% year over year, but they had been dramatically falling since the year 2000. In fact, I believe last year they were at the lowest level since 1971. So the action by this administration is in response to those apprehensions going up in recent months. I want to get your reaction, Congressman. President Trump is quite busy this morning just tweeting this about Russia. Our relationship with Russia is worse now than it has ever been, and that includes the Cold War. There is no reason for this. Russia needs us to help with their economy, something that would be very easy to do, and we need all nations to work together. Stop the arms race. Congressman, your reaction to that, because, again, this president, more than any other, has been attacked by people on the left, people in the media for being light on Russia, again, pushing that narrative of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. And his actions and words have both been incredibly strong at laying down what he feels about Russia interference and Russian aggression.
Well, there are people in the media who are obsessed with hating on Trump, and they will use anything they can to do so. And Russia is one of the examples. Look at the big picture. The president has been tough on Russia, and he's going to continue to be tough on Russia because Russia is a bully. They lie about their foreign policy. They have invaded Crimea. They have invaded eastern Ukraine. They invaded Georgia with no consequences. And they're going to continue. I think Putin is going to continue when he finds an opportunity to move into somebody else's country and try to put troops there. The President of the United States recognizes that, and he sees the importance of making sure that Russia is not an aggressor nation like it wants to be. His talk is tough, and also his actions are tough of removing spies from the United States, sending them back home where they belong. And I think it is a new day in the relationship with Russia, is that we need to get tough on Russia. But Russia needs to work with the West, and they refuse to do so.
I think one thing that did not get enough attention were the sanctions on Putin's rich cronies and their ability to do business, sanctions on their assets, limiting their ability to do business. That hits them where it hurts. And ultimately, that might change Putin's behavior. But again, not much coverage of what the Treasury Department did last week. Congressman, it's good to see you. Congressman Poe from Texas. Take care.
Thank you.